welcome to a special edition of Midpoint for this Thursday, August 25th. I'm your host, Mitch Perry, reporter for the websites FloridaPolitics.com and stpetersblog.com, here each and every Thursday at this time. And as I said, we have a special edition today for the first part of the show. As you know, Florida's primary election is this Tuesday, August 30th. Early voting continues through this weekend, and there are several competitive races taking place here in the Tampa Bay area. On today's show, we're going to hold a 30-minute debate between the two Democrats who are currently on the ballot in Pinellas County's District 68 race. That's Eric Lynn and Ben Diamond. And we're going to begin in just a few minutes. We're going to start the clock. This will last approximately half an hour. No call-ins from the listeners, though we welcome your participation after the debate is over, which will be approximately about 12:40 p.m. You can talk about the debate here or about the presidential election or anything else you want to talk about, so we'll have time at the end of the program for your phone calls. But right now, it's just going to be me and these two candidates. So hopefully you'll get into this, enjoy it. District 68 is currently held by Democrat Dwight Dudley. However, Dudley announced this spring he would not run for re-election, making it an open seat. First, attorney Ben Diamond got into the race, followed by Eric Lynn, who had been running for the Democratic nomination for Congress in Florida's 13th congressional district. Republican JB Benshimen is waiting in the wings and will face the winner of the August 30th primary in November. House District 68 covers much of St. Petersburg and Pinellas Park, Lealman and Feather Sound. The state office has a 2-year term and an annual salary of just under $30,000 a year. The rules are pretty basic here. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for opening and closing statements. They'll also get the chance to ask each other a question at the end. And the rest of the time, I'll be asking the questions to both candidates, and they'll have up to a minute to respond. If I find that it's justified to go back to the other candidate for response, we'll do that. We did flip a coin beforehand, and Ben Diamond won. So we'll start with Ben Diamond with an opening statement of 2 minutes. Ben?
Thank you, Mitch, and thank you, Eric, for joining me on your program. Mitch, thanks so much for having us. I'm Ben Diamond. I'm running to serve as our state representative from Pinellas County in District 68. I was born and raised in Pinellas. I had the privilege of going to work in Tallahassee for 4 years for Alex Sink during her administration as our state chief financial officer. And following my work up there, my wife and I moved back here to Tampa Bay, and we're raising our family in St. Petersburg. For the past decade, I have been working hard on trying to make progress on the issues that matter to our community here in Pinellas County. I volunteered as a lawyer on the constitutional amendment campaign to pass the Land and Water Legacy Amendment, so we would have a dedicated source of money for conservation and water protection in Florida. Been working to improve our public transportation through my service on the PSTA board in Pinellas County. I've also been involved in trying to improve our public schools and volunteer on the board of the Pinellas County Urban League. I'm really proud of the work that I've done in our community. Some people in this campaign have tried to characterize me as someone who's going to be in the pocket of big business. And I think the support that I've gotten from progressive leaders and Democrats who know my track record on these issues show that that's just not true. I'm proud of the support I have from Rick Kreisman, Alex Sink, and Bob Graham, and look forward to a discussion today about some of these difficult issues facing Florida.
Thank you very much, Ben Diamond. Eric Lynn, your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Mitch, and thank you, Ben, for being here today so we can have an excellent policy debate affecting the people of Pinellas County and the state of Florida. I'm running to be state representative in District 68 in Pinellas County because St. Petersburg needs to have a leader in Tallahassee who's going to represent the values of the community. I'm a native of St. Petersburg. I went to St. Petersburg High School, and I'm proud to have had the opportunity to work for President Barack Obama for 8 years. When I was working for President Obama, I was appointed to be the senior advisor to 3 secretaries of defense. I had the opportunity to work with our men and women in uniform to help both overseas in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and also back here at home. And I'm very proud of the work that I continue to do as a veteran advocate here in Pinellas County. The first job I had in St. Pete when I was in high school was actually in the newly refurbished Vinoy Hotel in the 1990s. And I was proud to then, as a high school kid, being parking cars and coaching kids. And I believe that the renovation of the Vinoy Hotel is actually what led to the excellent rejuvenation of St. Petersburg. Our tourism and our business is up. and things are going very well, but not for everyone. We still have a lot of work to do. And the people of St. Petersburg need leadership in Tallahassee. That leadership has been lacking. You know, I think about the men and women that I talk to every day as I campaign across Pinellas County. I spoke to a 93-year-old woman just yesterday who was also a proud Green Devil graduate of St. Pete High, told me she was class of 1942. And what she said is that unfortunately there has not been any leadership in Tallahassee. Rick Scott and the legislature have ruined what this state was about. We need to fight for education. We need to fight for our environment, and we need to fight for women's health. I look forward to an excellent policy discussion today.
Okay, thanks very much, Eric Lynn. So let's get to the questions. First question for both gentlemen. We'll start with Eric to answer the first question here. Last spring, the legislature rejected Governor Rick Scott's request for $250 million for Enterprise Florida, the public-private partnership that uses economic incentives to lure businesses to the state. Critics called it corporate welfare, but mayors like Rick Kreisman and Bob Buckhorn said it was a vital tool to recruit businesses to the Bay Area. If you were in the House, Eric Lynn, how would you have voted, and how do you feel about such incentives?
Well, I'm glad you asked the first question about the economy, Mitch, because the economy is very important to Pinellas County and to the state of Florida. I can tell you that I think Governor Scott has led us in the wrong direction on so many issues, and on the economy and business is one. I think he's been in the pocket of big business. I think that he has tried to continue over and over again to help out people that helped him in those special interests. So, in my opinion, I think that incentives for job creation are important. I've talked about a plan that we need to put forward so that we can actually help those that are out of work get jobs. And I feel like we need to set up those incentives for businesses going forward. Small businesses are the engine of the Pinellas County economy. And I really hope that we can set something up specifically for those small businesses as opposed to helping the large businesses that the governor was asking about.
Okay, back to you, Ben Diamond, on the idea of incentives for businesses.
Well, I think there have been some concerns about the Enterprise Florida program, both in terms of how effective it's actually been in producing results and in terms of oversight and conflicts of interest. And I think if we're investing hard-earned taxpayer dollars in incentive programs, we want to see the results. And I've gotten the support of the Florida Chamber of Commerce in this primary because I have ideas about how we can be doing more to provide support for our own businesses, our homegrown businesses here in Florida. The idea of supporting our small businesses in Pinellas County as opposed to spending a lot of money trying to lure some corporation from wherever they're headquartered to Florida. I think we need to focus on trying to promote our small businesses in Pinellas.
Okay, let's move on. You're both advocates of spending more money on public education in Florida schools. I've heard you both say that. I want to know your stance on charter schools. I want to read to you the Democratic Party platform, which was approved last month in Philadelphia. It says this, quote, Democrats oppose for-profit charter schools focused on making a profit off of public resources. We believe that high-quality public charter schools should provide options for parents, but should not replace or destabilize traditional public schools. Charter schools must reflect their communities and thus must accept and retain proportionate numbers of students of color, students with disabilities, and English language learners in relation to their neighborhood public schools. We support increased transparency and accountability for all charter schools. Ben, starting with you. You agree with everything the Democratic Party said there in that statement? Your view overall about charters here in Florida?
That's a pretty good statement, I think. Look, we have an unfortunate situation now where a number of these charter schools are failing. And I had a young man come up to me at my campaign kickoff event, and his kids were in a charter school in Pinellas County that was closing mid-year. And the stress of that on a parent is really unimaginable. And a lot of these charter schools are getting public money that could be going to improve our traditional public schools with very little oversight and accountability as to how it's being used. So I think given the fact that Florida ranks very low in per pupil funding for traditional public school students means we need to rethink how we're spending money on public education in Florida and think about what we can be doing with money that is currently being spent on charter schools to help our traditional public schools.
Question to you, Eric Lynn.
Yes, well, I would say that I think that was a good statement by the Democratic Party. I think, as I've said before, that charter schools have a place to serve as a model for how we can improve our public schools, but they should not be in business of making money and taking money away from our public schools. And as I've said many times, I'm a product of the Pinellas County Public Schools. I'm a proud graduate of St. Pete High. I believe that someone who's been a part of Pinellas County schools and a graduate of a Pinellas County school is best suited to be able to help improve education. Right now, unfortunately, Governor Scott and the legislature have led Florida to be 46th out of 50 states in spending on education. That is just wrong. That's why I have a plan of action to make sure that we can improve education. I've talked many times about hiring more teachers. I've talked many times about making sure that we can hire specialists and paying both those teachers and specialists what they deserve to teach our children, and then making sure that we are not training to the test and actually educating our kids.
Okay, next question. This is regarding an immigration-related question. Currently, 12 states in this country allow undocumented immigrants to obtain a driver's license. High LA Republican State Senator Rene Garcia has been pushing for several years to have the Florida legislature pass a similar bill to no avail. Going back to you, Eric Lynn, where do you stand on this issue?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the beginning part again? I didn't hear it.
Sure. 12 states in this country allow undocumented immigrants to obtain a driver's license. So that's the question, basically. Would you support undocumented immigrants here in Florida having the ability to get a driver's license?
The answer is yes, absolutely. What I believe and know about the other states that have driver's licenses for undocumented workers is that it's an issue of safety. We can talk immigration policy in a minute, and I believe we need an immigration overhaul that is comprehensive. But I also know that the safety of our roads here in Florida, and certainly the transportation issue, is key to everyone in Pinellas County and our community. And I think that if you have people driving cars without driver's license, without having taken driving tests, then that becomes a big safety issue for families and for people on the road. And I think that I would absolutely support doing this.
Ben, your question to you on immigration licenses for undocumented immigrants.
I would support that. I think that, look, the issue really is a federal issue that needs attention from Washington, and we haven't gotten the leadership up there on this issue that we need to make meaningful reform, and we need some meaningful, serious help from Washington on this issue. And unfortunately, of course, there's just a lot of politics, and a lot of it is very unpleasant and frankly unseemly in this presidential election. But I would support that on the state level.
Okay, let's move on. I want to ask you about the BDS movement, which stands for the Promoting Boycott, Divestment, and Sanction of Israel. Its supporters say the nation of Israel is occupying Palestinian land, discriminating against Palestinian citizens of Israel, and denying Palestinian refugees the right to return to their home. Last session, the Florida legislature passed a bill that says that any group that participates in boycotting Israel would be ineligible to bid on government contracts or receive state funds. Going to you, Ben Diamond, would you have voted for this bill or not, and why or why not?
Well, I'm a strong supporter of Israel, and I always have been. And I would be concerned with the idea of an entity that is boycotting Israel having the opportunity to receive a state contract. When I worked for Alex Sink, I watched the Florida legislature do a number of things to show our support for Israel, including taking some steps in the way state monies are invested to make sure that they're not invested in organizations that are promoting terror. I think it's smart that we do what we can as a state to stand by our allies, and Israel is our ally.
Eric Lynn, the question to you.
Well, absolutely. I would have supported the bill. I have been a long supporter of the U.S.-Israel relationship. I was proud to serve in the Department of Defense for President Barack Obama as the lead on the U.S.-Israel defense relationship, where I worked on the Iron Dome system. Just a quick word about that system. It's a defensive system that shoots down offensive rockets coming in at civilian targets, and it saved thousands of lives. It's actually one of the work that I am most proud of during my work for President Obama. But specifically as it relates to Florida, There are currently a lot of partnerships between Florida and the state of Israel, and the legislature bringing up that we should not be doing business with businesses that are boycotting Israel and our allies, I think was the right thing to do, and I would absolutely support that going forward, as well as other ways to increase the partnership between Florida and Israel, because the technology available from our allies, Israel and others, is extremely important to the business and economy of our state.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Eric Lynn. Okay, so let's see here. We got this primary coming up. We got early voting going on right now. Let me ask you about this, you guys. Independents continue to be the fastest growing part of the Florida electorate, and yet they're shut out of voting in this primary coming up on Tuesday. Do you support open primaries or not? And if you do support them, how do you convince your fellow Democrats in Tallahassee to do so? And if you don't, how can you justify shutting out nearly 3 million Floridians from exercising the franchise? Question to you, Eric Lynn.
Great question, Mitch. I absolutely support open primaries. I'm a proud Democrat. I've been a Democrat my entire life, and as you know, worked for President Obama and Democratic candidates. But I think that currently we have a number of people, including young people, who are not registering for one party or the other, and they want to vote for the person. And I believe that if we were to have an open primary, that would give them the opportunity to do that. Now, I want to raise another point, which I think is significant, and I hope that we could deal with this in the legislature in Tallahassee as well. And that has to do with people using sham candidates to close primaries. That's been a really big problem. There was an article written about it here in St. Pete just a few weeks ago. And you have people who have no interest in running for the legislature or for the state Senate, but they are filing to run so they can help a friend of theirs or another candidate to close that primary off, and in my opinion, disenfranchise voters that should have had a chance to vote for them.
Ben Diamond, the question on open primaries.
Right. Well, look, there are now a lot of games being played, and you just heard from Eric, one of them that's gotten a lot of attention. And I would support the idea of allowing a more open primary, more participation. I think the bigger question that we need to ask ourselves as Democrats is how do we convince those people to become members of our party? I mean, we're a party that believes in strong progressive values. We're a party that believes in environmental protection and public education and in expanding health care. And there's a larger and larger group of Floridians that are upset with the entire political process and are saying, we don't want to be a part of it. And we need to think about how we can talk to those people and get them to become a part of our party, because our party does have a great platform for progress.
Okay, let's move on. 12:24 in the afternoon. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to a live debate here between Ben Diamond and Eric Lynn here for the House District 68 seat in Pinellas County, the election next Tuesday. We've got we're about halfway through here, so we'll roll on here. Next question. Let's go to you, Ben, on this question. We know both of you are supporting legalized medical marijuana, which is on the ballot in November. But there's a group working to get marijuana legalized for all on the ballot, perhaps in 2018 or 2020. Such a measure would be on the ballot in 5 other states this year: Arizona, California, Maine, Massachusetts, and Nevada. What do you say about legalizing pot for all, Ben?
Well, first of all, I do support the amendment that's on the ballot for legalized medical marijuana. As you stated, you did correctly state my position. I think it's important for certain patients to be able to access all options as part of their treatment. I have some concerns, frankly, with the idea of going further than that. I think I'm comfortable with medical marijuana because I have physicians in my family. I know that the drug would be used in an appropriate way as part of a treatment plan. As a parent, I'm not sure I want to see Florida become the next Colorado. I don't think I want to see a pot shop on every corner. And so I would need some time to be convinced that that's a good idea.
Question to you, Eric Lynn, on legalizing pot overall here in Florida.
Sure. Well, I will also state my strong support for medicinal marijuana. I supported it when it was on the ballot last election. Disappointed that it didn't pass. As you know, it had 58% of the vote, and I hope that it will pass this time. As we know, there are many people with debilitating diseases, old and young, and from all backgrounds. And there has been a lot of medical science proving how medicinal marijuana can be helpful. So I'm a strong supporter of that amendment. But I share the concerns that Ben raised about making the state of Florida the next state of Colorado. I'm not completely opposed to it, and I'm open to hearing the arguments, but I have some concerns, as I've seen in in Colorado, issues with security, but also issues with money. If you've read any of the security situations that are taking place there, they're not able to put money in banks, and that's a problem that would be a problem for our state as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so let's see here. Next question. Is there any, staying with you, Eric Lynn, is there any state agency department head that is now an appointed position that you think should become an elected one?
Well, that's a very good question. Yes, I think that Governor Scott's leadership has been seriously lacking. And one of the pieces of evidence that proves that is that he has continually appointed friends of special interest, the special interests that have been funding his campaign, and then giving back to those special interests, whether it be in contracts or in appointments. And so specifically, one area that I think there should be an elected position is in the energy regulation. Currently, they are appointed by the governor, and I think that the people who are paying energy costs... Are you talking
about the Public Service Commission here?
Yes, that's exactly right. Okay. The Public Service Commission that affects energy. For listeners, it's the one that regulates our energy providers and our energy bills, our electricity bills that we pay every single month. And unfortunately, I think being appointed by Governor Scott, being part of the special interest, they have not been representing the people of Pinellas County the way that I hope an elected official would.
Ben, let me repeat the question to you. That being any state agency department head that is now an appointed position by the governor, do you think that should become an elected one, and why?
Well, the Public Service Commission is the most glaring example. When you take the time to read and study what they're actually doing up there in the Public Service Commission in terms of regulating utilities, it's really astounding. I mean, just this past month, the Florida Supreme Court reversed the Public Service Commission because the Public Service Commission gave a green light to one of the big utilities in Florida to explore out-of-state fracking, and we're all paying for that. It's the Tallahassee revolving door. Serve on the Public Service Commission, head off to the big utilities. This has been an issue that has been really important in our district. My representative, Dwight Dudley, has been fighting on it. I admire his fight, and I'm proud of the fact that Mary Rachel Dudley is supporting my campaign. I agree with Eric. This is the number one issue that needs to be addressed.
Any other agency, just quickly before we move on, do you think about it at all? I mean, it's okay. That's the only one you can think about right now.
Well, I think that's the most glaring example, and I, we have an interesting situation where many of our agency heads report to the whole cabinet, and I have some questions about how well that works in practice. We probably don't have time to get into that.
Eric, anything else you want to say about that?
Well, the only other agency that I think needs to be looked at again is the insurance commissioner. I raised that because if you remember many years ago, it was an elected position.
Bill Nelson,
my good friend, Senator Nelson, it was our insurance commissioner here in Florida, and I think that was an important position. It was changed to now being an appointment, and I'm concerned about rates being raised by insurance companies to people all across Pinellas County and across Florida, and I think we need to take a look at the insurance position as well.
Okay, thanks. Let's talk local transportation. Clearwater State Senator Jack Latvala proposed merging HART and PSTA a few years ago. I think it was back in 2012, actually. Initial study said more than $2 million could be saved, but a subsequent scrubbing of the numbers showed it would be much more modest, perhaps just thousands of dollars. So forget about whether it would actually save any money. On its face, do you think it's a good or bad idea for Hillsborough and Pinellas transit agencies to merge? Eric, you first.
Sure. Well, transportation is an extremely important issue, and one that I've been talking about with voters and citizens of Pinellas County for several months. And what I think is key is that we look at what the needs of the people are and how is it going to benefit. Unfortunately, we had an amendment called Greenlight Pinellas that was up for a vote 2 years ago, and it failed. I think there were a number of mistakes made in the way that moved forward, and I would strongly advocate that we put something together like that again, because we need to see investment in transportation in Pinellas County, specifically in St. Petersburg. It's been supported, as you know, by our Tampa Bay Rays, by large businesses in the community that will help not only our economy, but will help people across the county. So I feel that we need to make sure that we are having a comprehensive solution to transportation.
So I'm sorry. So what about an idea of a merger? Yes or no?
Sure. So my sense on it is that we should have the opportunity for cities to take their own vote. Tampa's been talking about that, and Mayor Kreisman has been talking about that here in St. Pete, and I think that would help. As far as a merger, I haven't been convinced yet by the numbers that it would actually do much to help transportation, but I'm open to hearing about it.
Ben, question to you, as a of course, PSTA member.
Well, I think this is an area of big difference between me and my opponent. I spent 2 years actually working on the transportation issues here in Tampa Bay as a PSTA board member representing the city of St. Pete. And in my work, I have become convinced that the only way we are going to make progress with this very difficult problem is by taking a regional approach. What I hear from the Florida Department of Transportation all the time in meetings that we have about how are we going to solve these problems is, well, you know, you guys in Tampa Bay, you're still fighting with each other. You know, it's Tampa versus St. Pete. It's Hillsborough versus Pinellas. We all need to get on the same page. I don't know exactly which agencies need to be working closer together, or even if we all need to merge into one agency, whether that's our metropolitan planning organizations or whether that's our transit agencies or all of them. But we absolutely need a regional approach if we're going to solve this problem.
Okay, let's move on. Transportation related still, actually, here. And Ben, we'll go back to you on this. The state has been unable to pass legislation regulating TNCs, transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, over the course of the past 3 legislative sessions, and they may not again in 2017. Those companies have come into compliance in many jurisdictions of the state, but not others, like in Orlando or here in Hillsborough County. One of the obstacles is the company's objection to having their drivers undergo background checks that require fingerprinting. Do you think that is necessary, Ben Diamond, that we should have Uber drivers and Lyft drivers have to have background checks with fingerprints?
Well, let me just take a step back first. I mean, we're living in one of the most transformational times in terms of transportation since the creation of the personal automobile. And these companies like Uber and Lyft are the future. They really are. And we need to think carefully whether we're acting as the state legislature or whether it's local governments, that we're enacting regulation that is consistent with the innovative technologies that are coming forward. And so I think this is an issue that needs a lot more study and debate. Obviously, we want to provide for public safety in our regulation, but we can't stifle innovation.
Eric Lynn, the question to you.
Sure. Well, I would agree. I think that what we have seen in transportation over the past few years is that companies like Uber and Lyft are changing the way people travel. Now, we just spoke a minute ago how important it is that we have a overall transportation improvement in Pinellas County. And one of the places that is filling that void when we don't have it currently because of the failures of some of those that have worked on transportation here in our community is Uber and Lyft moving forward to take on those people that need to move around the community. So what I have said is that, well, we need to make sure that safety is important, and we need to make sure that we know about drivers and ensure that there are no problems moving forward. We also need to be clear. Uber and Lyft are here to stay. We shouldn't be fighting them and be closed-minded about it. Let's work together with them.
Okay. This will be my last question, and we're going to have you guys allow to question each other and then closing statements. Let's see here. In January, the Supreme Court here, United States Supreme Court invalidated Florida's capital punishment law because it didn't require juries to find at least one aggravating factor before imposing the death penalty. The legislature rushed to pass a new sentencing law, which was also challenged, and an appeal is pending before the Florida Supreme Court. I don't want to ask you the question about whether you believe we should no longer have like unanimous. I think that we've even changed that in terms of juries deciding this. But overall, just on a moral question, the death penalty. Eric Lynn, you first. Do you believe in the death penalty or not?
Well, so you said you didn't want to ask it, but I want to answer the Florida-specific question first, which I think is an important one. It is now required for a unanimous jury decision to put the death penalty forward against a defendant or a convicted felon. And I think that was the right thing to do. Previously, just for the listeners who don't know the background on it, the jury would have to be unanimous in finding guilt, but then the judge was making the decision on the death penalty, and I think that was wrong. I think that you should be judged by your peers, as our Constitution states, especially when it has to do with the death penalty. Now, my view of the death penalty overall is that there have been a number of problems with innocent people being executed. That is not right, and it's not something that should happen in our state. So I believe that the death penalty needs a severe overhaul, and we need to make sure that we're doing everything right if we're going to use capital punishment.
Question to you, Ben Diamond, on this, and Eric explained it better than I did in terms of what the current law is right here. But so do you agree with Eric, I guess, on that? The first question about the jury selection, or in terms of unanimous decision or not on the death penalty?
I do. You know, I like the idea of our jury system. It's a critical, fundamental concept in our Constitution. There's no decision more momentous in our criminal justice system than the decision about capital sentencing. And I think that decision should be made by a jury, and it should have to be made unanimously. And as far as the death penalty, I have concerns about the problems that we've seen in the way it's been implemented, but I'm also aware that it does serve a purpose, and so I support the death penalty. I think we need to be studying these problems and thinking critically about how we address them.
Okay, that's going to be the end of my questions. We're going to have Ben, you have the choice here if you'd like to ask a question of Eric Lynn.
Sure, and I appreciate this opportunity to have this forum with you, Eric. My question for you is, since you've come back to Pinellas County, let me just start by saying, as you know, I've been working on a number of local issues for a while, transportation, environmental issues. Since you came back last year, can you talk about some of the issues locally that you've been working on in our community apart from your political work in running for Congress?
Sure. I'm happy to talk about all the work that I've been doing here in Pinellas County and in St. Pete. I know that you're new to St. Pete, Ben. I know you just moved here 2 years ago, and I came home from working for President Obama in 2014. I was really proud of the work that I was able to do for the president and on behalf of our men and women in uniform at the Pentagon. What I'm most proud of my work back in the community is continuing to be a veteran advocate here in Pinellas County. Unfortunately, we have too many men and women that served our military in Afghanistan, in Iraq, that are coming home and they don't have health care. They don't have jobs, and they need to be assisted by a number of groups here in Pinellas County, and I'm proud to have been working with them. I'm also serving on board of charity organization and continue to move forward, obviously, with education issues as well. So I've been really proud to use the experience that I got during my work with President Obama and working for the Secretaries of Defense and the military to be able to use that and help when I come back here to St.
Eric,
Pete.
thanks. Your question to Ben Diamond.
Sure. My question for you, Ben, is one that concerns me about the leadership in Tallahassee. And I'm glad that today we were able to have a good conversation on policy issues. As I mentioned during the debate, I've been really concerned about what's been taking place in Tallahassee with the insurance industry. I talk to people every day, knocking on doors, in phones, and at events, that are so worried about their rates being increased. They continually are increased, whether it's home insurance, flood insurance, other insurance that's going forward. And what we've seen is that Governor Rick Scott took a huge amount of money from the insurance industries, and then he has worked very closely with them. The best example that I can think of is a local insurance company here named Heritage that actually gave $140,000 to Governor Scott, and then when he was elected, he gave him a $50 million contract that had a big headline in the Tampa Bay Times. Now, unfortunately, we've seen that A quarter of your funding.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
A quarter of your funding, Ben, has come from the insurance industry, and your largest single check actually came from that specific insurance company that supported Governor Scott, who then gave them $50 million. My question to you, and I think it's a concern from people who are paying more in their insurance every single month, is what did you promise the insurance companies? Why is the insurance company that helped Rick Scott helping you in this race?
Well, that's a pretty loaded, long question. I don't know if I can respond to all the suggestions in the 60 seconds I have. Look, I have a track record of working on progressive issues, and that's why I'm proud of the support I've gotten from progressive leaders in our community. And I also have the support of businesses in our community. And the fact is, I'm just as committed to lowering insurance rates as our current representative Dwight Dudley is. If you look at the number one issue right now in this area, it's insurance fraud. The thing that is driving up the cost of insurance in Florida is these water claims that are being fraudulently turned into very expensive claims. So I'm going to stand on the side of policyholders and stand for lower rates.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Okay, we're ready for closing statements now. You have up to 2 minutes, and we'll begin with Eric Lynn.
Okay, excellent. Well, Mitch, thank you for hosting this forum, and Ben, thank you for having a good policy discussion here today. It's been a real honor for me to campaign across Pinellas County and to be able to meet the people in Pinellas County that care so much about what's happening in Tallahassee. Unfortunately, they have told me time and time again how disappointed they are in the leadership in Tallahassee. They are disappointed by Governor Rick Scott. They're disappointed by leadership that we've had over the past few years. And they're looking for someone who can bring problem solving to Tallahassee on behalf of the people and the families and the values of Pinellas County. I was really honored to have the opportunity to work for President Barack Obama, to work for 3 secretaries of defense, and to learn the problem-solving skills that are needed to deal with enormous problems, such as with our military and policies overseas. We need someone who has those problem-solving skills in Tallahassee to represent our community. As I mentioned before, I have a plan for education. I'm really upset that Florida ranks 46th in investment in education, and I will fight to increase funding. I think we need to pay our teachers more. We need to hire specialists, and we need to make sure that we are not teaching to the culture of the test and allowing our teachers to educate children. I hear it every day from teachers across this community. And we need to make sure that we are also protecting our environment. I was proud to work on the Everglades Restoration Act 15 years ago in 2001. And if Governor Scott had listened to the law in the Everglades Restoration Act, instead of listening to the special interest in Tallahassee, then land south of Okeechobee would have been purchased, and we would not be seeing this toxic algae that we see on the East Coast affecting tourism in Florida and potentially even here on our coast. We also need to fight for women's health, something that I care deeply about, and I will stand up to Governor Scott and the Republican legislature on women's health. I want to ask you for your vote. I want to make sure that we can have somebody with St. Petersburg values in Tallahassee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric Lynn. Closing statement for Ben Diamond.
Mitch, thanks for hosting this excellent discussion. Eric, thank you for being here as well. I really enjoyed it. We have a serious problem in state government, in my opinion, because we have leaders up there that are not listening to the communities that they represent on all of these issues. I have been invested in working on Florida issues for over a decade. I am the best candidate for this position because I will be ready on day one, not just generally to solve problems, but actually having spent years working on these problems, trying to improve our transportation in Tampa Bay, trying to enact better environmental policies to protect our water and to conserve our state lands, and trying to do more to improve our public schools. And it's my track record of work on these issues that has earned me the support of the teachers, the Florida Education Association on the education issues. That's earned me the support of the environmental community and the Florida League of Conservation Voters on the environmental issues, and has earned me the support of elected leaders in Tampa Bay who know the work that I am prepared to do. This is an important choice. All elections matter, but I think voters in our primary really do have the choice between a candidate who has experience working on these state issues, and I would be honored to have the opportunity to represent Pinellas County in the Florida House.
He is Ben Diamond. He is Eric Lynn. These are the two men who are running for the Democratic nomination for House District 68 next Tuesday. Actually, of course, early voting going on throughout the weekend. House District 68 covers much of St. Petersburg and Pinellas Park, Lealman and Feather Sound, and we wish all our listeners to go out and, of course, vote in the primary. That is going to be the end of the debate, but not the end of the show. I'm going to give out the phone number right now, 813-239-9663. If you want to talk about what you just heard or anything else in politics, we're going to take a short break here, and we'll be back in just a moment.